In the time of King Ahasuerus, the throne of this vast empire was set in the majestic city of Susa, located in ancient Elam, now known as southwestern Iran. In Susa, the Bible records an astonishing miracle: a vast empire conquered by just one woman. For 6 months, King Ahasuerus held an extravagant banquet, culminating in a final week-long celebration inviting everyone in Susa. Driven by pride and extravagance, he called for Queen Vashti, his wife, to be shown to the assembly for her beauty. However, Vashti refused. After being publicly humiliated, the king banished her. His counselors then advised a bold strategy to find a new queen from the young virgins throughout the kingdom. One of these girls was Hadassah, though she was known by a different name. Once in the palace, she was renamed Esther. Esther gained the king's favor, and without knowledge that she was Jewish, Ahasuerus made her queen. At the same time, a dangerous foe quietly emerged within the palace. Haman, from the Amalekite line, longtime enemies of Israel, had reached the top position beside the king. Yet when all were told to kneel before him, Mordecai, Esther's cousin, stood firm and refused. Driven by pride and vengeance, Haman refused to settle for punishing Mordecai alone. He plotted the destruction of an entire people. Personal revenge soon grew into a deadly plot. Haman told the king about a scattered nation living throughout his realm. They were a nation with peculiar laws who refused to follow the empire's rules, and Haman persuaded the king to order their destruction. Through falsehoods, he convinced the king and sealed the decree with the royal ring. Within a year, death awaited all Jews in Persia, men, women, and children. The Jewish community was thrown into turmoil, and Mordecai urgently reached out to Esther, pleading for her to step in. Upon hearing the decree, Esther felt cornered. To rescue her people, she had to go before the king uninvited, which meant risking death unless the king graciously offered his scepter. At last, Esther chose to risk her life and approach the king uninvited. Yet God granted her favor in his eyes. When the king raised his scepter, Esther held back, knowing that timing was everything. After inviting the king and Haman to a first banquet, she held a second where she delivered the truth like a powerful, sharpened sword. "Had they only sold us into slavery," she said, "I might have stayed silent, but this decree calls for the complete destruction of my people and me." Startled, the king stood and asked, "Who would have the courage to do this?" Esther spoke in reply, "The enemy is that wicked man, Haman." Fury burned in the king's eyes. Haman fell to his knees, begging for his life in desperation. But the moment had passed. Haman was executed on the very gallows he had made for Mordecai. Yet the danger still remained. So Esther and Mordecai devised a bolder plan, a new decree. The king approved it. Across the provinces, the Jews were given permission to defend themselves. The day meant for their destruction turned into a day of victory. Unknowingly, the Persian Empire became a stronghold, a throne, and a protector for God's people. Following Esther's miracle in Susa, Persia appeared to recede into the background of the biblical story. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, and Rome came to dominate the scene. But Persia's quiet didn't mean it was gone. Centuries later, as the world awaited the arrival of the Messiah, Persia reappeared once more. In the Gospel of Matthew, there's a passage often recited but seldom fully understood. Magi arrived from the east to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We have seen his star rising in the east and have come to worship him." But who were these Magi, and what made them journey so far, following only a sign? The term Magi, from the Greek magoi, referred to learned priests and astronomers from the east. While the Bible doesn't specify their exact nationality, strong evidence points to them coming from the ancient Medo-Persian Empire, what we now call Iran. These Magi were part of a powerful religious caste in Persia, known for their deep knowledge of the stars, ancient texts, and prophetic traditions handed down through generations. Though not kings, they were scholars, men of science, authority, and spiritual wisdom. It's very likely that among their scrolls were the writings of the prophet Daniel, who had served long before in the courts of Babylon and Persia. Daniel not only interpreted dreams for King Nebuchadnezzar, but also foretold the arrival of the Messiah with remarkable accuracy in Daniel. From the time the order was given to rebuild and restore Jerusalem until the coming of the Messiah, the Prince, there would be 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. If these wise men were familiar with Daniel's prophecies, they probably realized the Messiah's arrival was near. When they saw the star, they instantly recognized that the promised Savior had been born. But what truly stood out was how they responded. They gave up everything to follow that star, traveled through deserts, and reached Bethlehem bearing 3 precious gifts, each filled with deep prophetic significance. Gold, representing his role as king. Frankincense, acknowledging his holiness and divinity. Myrrh, pointing ahead to his suffering and burial. In their journey, the Magi uncovered the greatest cosmic mystery, that the child was both sovereign, deity, and sacrifice. As Jerusalem's scholars stayed silent and Herod schemed to kill him, the wise men from the east were the first to recognize the prophecy fulfilled, humbly bowing before the Messiah. This was not a chance event, but the realization of prophecy. Persia, the land that had once freed Israel and rebuilt the temple, now took the lead in honoring its Redeemer. Time and again, Persia served as an instrument of God's revelation. From the beginning of history through the birth of Christ, ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, was woven into the fabric of God's plan. The story of Iran in the Bible does not end with Bethlehem. Though Persia was once a symbol of redemption, it would later appear in some of the bleakest prophecies yet to unfold. The prophet Ezekiel delivered God's revelation not just about Persia's origin, but also its fate